Could you describe, I mean, I've had at least briefly the gift of seeing Apni-Up on the ground and what happens. And could you tell us in a way, maybe just through the stories of a couple of women, what Apni-Up actually does to create these circles of strength?
Yeah, first of all, Apni-Up actually goes into a red light area, which is a brothel district or a slum. And we meet the women. We go inside the brothels and sit on a bed with the women and talk to them that what do you want. And the women have so often forgotten how to dream because they've been so brutalized inside the brothels. They've been raped repeatedly, they've been tied to the bed, they've been forced to become dependent on drugs and alcohol. They have been deprived of food. They're forced to stand if the customer doesn't show up on time till they get a customer. They suffer from insomnia. They have repeated abortions, suicide attempts, psychosocial trauma, sexually transmitted diseases, anything you can think of. And then, you know, when we walk in and sit on a bed with them and they say, when we say, do you have a dream? It's a very unexpected question for the women, but they do have a dream. And they start by saying that, you know, we want our daughters to be protected. Because when the women start becoming older in the brothel system, and by old I mean in their 20s, that's when the brothel managers start talking to them saying that we are going to throw you out on the sidewalk and you can fend for yourselves. And you have to give us your daughters to replace yourself. And so the first anxiety that the women have is what's going to happen to their daughters. And so all of them keep telling us that, can you do something to protect our daughters? And we start by forming a mother's group of the women and starting a community classroom right inside the brothel district or the slum, which the women can access. The women come to give their daughters to the classrooms and pick them up and drop them, and we hire teachers who are teaching the girls how to prepare for school. The change begins to happen to the daughters, and sometimes there are boys too, so sons also accompany their sisters to school, and they start going to school and they begin to change. And that's when the mothers begin to talk to us and say, what about us? Can we have some access to something? Can we get a job? Can we get a livelihood skill? Can we also learn how to read and write? So then we start with adult literacy classes, and then we start doing legal rights trainings. So the mothers groups then become a women's group. And they begin to find the strength in each other, which they thought it was not possible and it was lost and all of that. And then the women's groups, we sort of start training them and providing them with access and exposure. Also, start teaching them how to read and write. And we started a newspaper called Red Light Dispatch, which the women write for their own stories for their sisters all over India, and that empowers them. And we take on different cases and different struggles for the women, because for some, for example, one woman wanted to sell balloons on the beach to get out of prostitution. And when she went to sell balloons on the beach, the police tried to get a payoff from her, saying this part of the beach is not yours and you can't come and sell balloons here. And at that point, she couldn't do anything, but she came back and spoke to the group about it. And she said, I want to sell balloons, but this is what the police wanted and I don't want to pay him. So what can we do? So then we came up with the idea that this group should have identity cards to show that they belong to a group and that they had backup systems where they could go to a lawyer, they could go to the media, they could do something where the policeman would actually be exposed. And that began to work for that group. So then we started doing it in all the other groups. And that struggle solidified the women's groups even more. It's called Mahila Mandals. And from there, then we go on to the livelihood question, because all the women know that they're going to be thrown out of the brothels and the sidewalk, and the trajectory is really dead bondage, prostitution, begging, and death. And death is very early, 40, 45. So when we thought about the livelihood question, we thought, okay, how can we do it? So we started forming very small economic co-ops known as self-help groups. And these co-ops start by just the idea of savings. The women don't have any savings. They're living in dead bondage. And we said, okay, why don't you start in this community classroom, which now has a legal cell in it also, so it becomes bigger than a community classroom. Start by saving 1 rupee a day, which is less than a cent. And that amount of money we will all collectively deposit in a bank, and then the bank will give us a matching gift. And with that money, then we will start a small business. And each of these women's groups are doing it. So now we have 150 such self-help groups all across India, and one group is running a tea shop. Another group is embroidering scarves and shawls and bags and exporting it to the goodies chain of stores here in the US. Another group is running a canteen in Bombay. So each of these groups is finding solutions within themselves with just a little bit of help from Apne Aap. And the community centers community classrooms that Apne Aap starts, they slowly become community centers. And where the women meet, they stitch torn clothes, talk to each other, launder their clothes because they don't have access to toilets very often. And especially when they live on the sidewalk, and in the brothel, they have to share the toilet with 200 people. So sometimes they just don't have access to a toilet. And so wash their clothes, use the toilet, launder, cook for each other, share stories, laugh, sing, and also run these struggles, just like the kind of struggle I told you about, which teaches them more about their rights than anything else by actually fighting a case out. And make sure their daughters go to school, they run their own creche, they begin to self-manage these community centers, and then the change begins to happen because then their dreams and ambitions grow. And then they begin to say, so how can we get the law changed? Why is the customer able to come and exploit me and go away? Why does the system exist? So for now, what we are doing is that all these 150 groups together are running a campaign to change the Indian law on trafficking. And what we are saying is that why are women being punished under the law? Because women are being picked up for soliciting in a public place. And why are there such light punishments against the pimps and johns? Why are they getting away with impunity? Because the women are saying that as long as there are johns, this prostitution system will continue. So we have to change the law to do that. So now we are running a campaign all over India where the petitions are being taken around by the women and they are collecting the signatures. They've created a street play which they hold outside railway stations and bus stops to get more petitions and make people aware about their problems. And they go and testify to Parliament, and they hold survivor conferences where they actually draft the kind of law they want. And so the change, which begins with a very small group of 15 women sitting together, actually then leads to 10,000 women together campaigning for a change in the law. And that's how we work.
Just that shows us how you create independence, not dependence, you know. But how dangerous is that? And are you able to work with people younger than those who are judged by the pimps and the brothels and the traffickers to be too old? What attitude do they have toward you when you are doing this work and gathering them, you know, in the red light area?
It's extremely dangerous, but you know, as an activist, all of you know in this room that you still do it, even if it's dangerous. So, you know, we've had knives pulled out on us, our car has been stolen, our office has been attacked, our files taken away, our staff members stabbed. Recently, my office manager was boxed and he started crying and he said, I didn't sign up for this, I just want to keep accounts. And, the women inside the brothels who are organizing in these small groups and who are insisting that their daughters will go to school while the pimps and sometimes their boyfriends and their husbands are saying that no, your daughters will stay here to replace you, who are actually facing it off right inside the brothels and the mud huts. They are threatened, and you know, for example, Meena, a woman in Bihar, was recently told when we were fighting to get some kids back into school that you know, they're going to shoot you dead. So she responded to this trafficker and she said, you know, only Allah knows when I'm going to die, not you. And she just carried on. And they faced off the traffickers right inside the brothel districts. Some women are beaten black and blue for coming to our meetings, and they still continue. And they just insist for change for themselves and for their daughters. And because of that, like 814 girls are in school today. And I'll tell you an example actually, which will make it very obvious how the fight at the level that we have to do. We run a girls' hostel in Bihar, and there are it's a girls' hostel which has 50 girls who are aged between 9 to 13 years old, and 23 of them are daughters of women in prostitution. Now, what happened recently was there's a cattle fair which comes to Bihar every year in January. These girls were pulled out during the cattle fair to be made available for prostitution to all the people who would be coming to buy things at the fair by their guardians, who were also running the brothels. Now the guardians are the pimps and they are running these home-based brothels in that village in Bihar. and they are also the fathers, but so-called fathers. And they said, we want our daughters back. So they pulled them out. We applied to the district authorities. We wrote letters saying these are our students and you have to send them back to school, because otherwise they will be sexually exploited. They are in home-based brothels. The cattle fair is here. This is where the big demand is for prostitution. And nobody responded. They said we cannot interfere with what the guardians want for their daughters. Even if they are legally supposed to be in school, nobody would interfere. So the police would not register a complaint. The district magistrate would not even respond to our letter. The district superintendent of education said, this is not something I deal with. It's up to the guardian to decide whether to educate the child or not. And only the mothers who were living inside the brothel district in the mud huts were the ones phoning me and reporting to me that so-and-so girl is going to be put into prostitution tomorrow, Didi. We have to get her out. And so we were struggling about what to do and how to get those girls back. Finally, I went to the chief minister of that state, who's also like a governor over here, and he was actually in a press conference talking about all the things he's accomplished in his state. And I said, but there are these 23 girls who are in home-based brothels, and they are not in school. So all your accomplishments mean nothing if I know about this actual fact, that these girls are not in school and they are in home-based brothels. And I said this at the press conference, and I said, so what are you going to do about it? He promptly flew back to his state capital, and he sent a team down to us. The team began to negotiate with the guardians to say, send the girls back. But they were teams from the education ministry, so they really didn't have any muscle power. They tried every democratic means. They would hold meetings in our community center with the women, with the men, with the parents, everybody. And 19 of the girls came back in this process, but 3 were still left. And the police had still, in the meanwhile, not registered any complaints that they had taken away these girls for months and they had not attended school. So these 3 who were left, then education ministry team tells me, forget it, it's only 3, you've got the bulk back. So I said, what do you mean by bulk? Each individual life is really important. And it's a girl, and she was my student, and I remember their names and I know them and I want them back. I'm not giving up. So and then I showed up at the police station and I said, 3 of my girls have gone missing and I want them back and you have to register the complaints. The police officer says, I'm not going to register the complaint. So I flew back to Delhi and I went and met the Chief Justice of India. And I said, the police is not listening. The governor tried to help. They won't even listen to the governor. Now what do I do next? What kind of a system do we have? So the Chief Justice contacted the local judge in our district and said that, I want to know within 24 hours what action is going to be done. Otherwise, I'm suspending all the police officers in the district. And so the police officer comes running at midnight to the house to say, oh man, where's your complaint? Where's your complaint? Can you give us the complaint? So we gave him the complaint. But then it was like a nightmare actually, because now it's done and I can talk about it. Pamela was there when I was going through it and she saw how tense I was. So we registered the complaint, but these 3 girls have actually been sexually exploited. So 2 of the girls come back, and one of the people who put one of the girls into prostitution was actually her sort of legal guardian and father. So she was really in a dilemma that should I complain? What should I do? Will they put me into a children's jail? We took her back to school, gave her counseling and all of that. And she actually took a stand to go and study by testifying against the person she believed was her father. Because she had a younger sister and she wants to protect her sister, she said, who's also in our school, who's also a student in our school. So she was really brave, and her name is Nisha. And she's studying again and all of that, but there were 2 more. And I said, I'm not giving up.